You know that feeling when you tell yourself, just one more time? One more scroll, one more snack, one more late night, one more message you probably shouldn't send. And even while you're doing it, there's a quiet part of you watching, aware, almost detached, wondering why you keep choosing the thing you know won't feel good later. It's a strange experience, being both the one who decides and the one who questions the decision. Most people would call this a lack of discipline, or weakness, or self-sabotage. But those words miss something important, because what looks like bad choices from the outside is often a very consistent pattern on the inside. Not random, not careless, just misunderstood. What's really happening here isn't about willpower. It's about how your brain is wired to protect you, even if the protection doesn't look helpful in the long run. Your brain doesn't actually care about your long-term happiness. It cares about immediate relief. And once you see that clearly, something starts to make more sense. There's a system in your brain, deep, automatic, that's constantly scanning for reward and relief. When something gives you a quick sense of comfort, distraction, or pleasure, your brain releases dopamine. Not as a reward for doing something good, but as a signal saying, remember this, come back to this. Over time, your brain starts building shortcuts. It learns, this feeling leads to relief. And it doesn't always distinguish between what's helpful and what's harmful, only what works quickly. That's why the things that aren't good for you often feel the most compelling. Not because you prefer them, but because your brain has learned they're reliable. There's research showing that the brain prioritizes immediate rewards over delayed benefits, even when the delayed outcome is clearly better. But in real life, this doesn't feel like reward prioritization. It feels like being pulled, almost automatically, towards something familiar. And familiarity is powerful. Because for many people, these patterns didn't start as habits. They started as solutions. Maybe distraction became a way to quiet an overwhelming mind. Maybe comfort behaviors replaced something that was missing. Maybe certain choices helped you avoid feelings you didn't yet know how to process. Over time, your nervous system adapts. It begins to rely on what once helped you cope. So now, even when those behaviors don't serve you the same way, your brain still recognizes them as safe, predictable, accessible. That doesn't mean they're good, but it also doesn't mean they're a failure. It just means your system learned something and kept repeating it. And this is where people often get it wrong. They assume the goal is to eliminate these patterns completely, to become someone who always chooses the right thing. But there isn't one correct way to be. Some people are more driven by long-term goals. Others are more sensitive to immediate emotional shifts. Neither is inherently better. They're just different ways the brain organizes experience. What's often overlooked is that the same brain that pulls you toward quick relief is also the brain that's deeply responsive, intuitive, and emotionally aware. There's a trade-off there. The sensitivity that makes you vulnerable to certain patterns is often the same sensitivity that allows you to feel deeply, connect easily, and notice things others miss. So this isn't about fixing something broken. It's about understanding something that's already working, just in a way that might not align with what you've been told is ideal. And maybe that's the shift. Not asking, why do I keep doing what's bad for me? But asking, what is this actually doing for me right now? Because underneath every pattern, there's a reason it stayed. And once you start seeing that reason without judgment, the pattern itself begins to feel less like an enemy and more like something you can slowly understand. You're not lacking control. You're responding to something your brain learned to prioritize. And that makes sense. More than most people realize. If this feels familiar, there's probably more to your patterns than it seems on the surface. And sometimes, The most important parts aren't the behaviors themselves, but what they've been quietly trying to do for you all along.